I stood on the grand stage of the Hilton Ballroom, looking out at 500 employees while Patricia Hendricks announced the merger with TechVault Industries. $230 million, the biggest deal in company history. Then my name flashed on the screen behind her, Director of Financial Operations changing to Administrative Support. The room went silent. Gasps echoed. I smiled, nodded, walked back to my seat, and started clearing my desk. They had no idea what I knew. The signing was tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I had other plans. My hands shook against the steering wheel of my Honda Accord as I drove home through Chicago traffic that evening. The humiliation burned in my chest, but underneath it was something colder, sharper. I had worked at Summit Solutions for 6 years, clawed my way up from financial analyst to director. Patricia hired me 8 months ago specifically because she needed someone meticulous for the TechVault merger. Someone who could dig through every contract, every licensing agreement, every revenue projection. Someone who would find the problems before they destroyed us. And I found them. 6 months ago, I started the due diligence process. TechVault looked perfect on paper. A software company with steady growth, impressive client lists, cutting-edge technology. But as I went deeper into their business model, cracks appeared. Their entire platform was built on licensing agreements with 3 major software companies: DataSource Incorporated, CloudMatrix, and SystemBridge. Without those licenses, TechVault had nothing, just an empty shell. The licenses were set to expire in 18 months. I spent weeks verifying the information, cross-referencing public records, analyzing their SEC filings. The evidence was buried deep, but it was there. When those licenses expired, TechVault would lose 60% of their revenue overnight. Any company built on borrowed technology has an expiration date. This one was coming fast. 3 months ago, I compiled everything into a confidential memo. 20 pages of analysis, charts, projections, showing exactly what would happen when the licenses expired. I delivered it to Patricia personally, sitting across from her in her corner office with its view of Lake Michigan. She barely looked at it. "Esther, you're being paranoid," she said, tapping her manicured nails on the mahogany desk. TechVault has been around for 15 years. Their CEO has an impeccable reputation. You're trying to sabotage this deal. I'm trying to protect us, I replied. If we complete this merger and those licenses expire, we're looking at massive losses, layoffs, possibly bankruptcy. Patricia leaned forward, her expression hardening. This deal is happening. I've already committed to the board. Your job is to make sure the paperwork is clean, not to question my judgment. That should have been my first warning. Now, pulling into my apartment complex in suburban Chicago, I realized Patricia hadn't just dismissed my concerns. She had actively buried them, and today's public demotion was her way of destroying my credibility before I could speak up again. My apartment was a modest 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor. I unlocked the door, dropped my bag, and went straight to my home office. I kept copies of everything, personal backups of all my due diligence files, saved to an external hard drive Patricia didn't know existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Jordan Walsh, one of my colleagues. "I can't believe Patricia did that to you. Are you okay?" Jordan was one of 3 people who knew about my concerns regarding TechVault. The others were Samantha Price and Greg Anderson, both senior analysts who had helped me verify the licensing data. I typed back carefully. "I'm fine, just processing everything." I didn't tell Jordan what I was really thinking. I didn't tell anyone, because as I reviewed my documents that evening, I noticed something I had forgotten. The escrow agreement for the merger. In deals this size, the money doesn't change hands directly. It goes into an escrow account held by a neutral third party, in this case Midwest Escrow Services, one of the largest escrow companies in Illinois. The funds sit there until both parties confirm everything is in order. Then the escrow company releases the money. According to the agreement I helped draft 6 weeks ago, the Director of Financial Operations had to sign off on the fund release. That was me. Or it had been me, until 4 hours ago. But the escrow paperwork was filed 6 weeks ago with my name and title. Patricia would need to file amended documents to transfer signing authority. And according to Midwest Escrow Services standard procedures, any change to signatories required 48 hours advance notice. The signing was in 15 hours. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Patricia had made a mistake. She was so focused on humiliating me that she forgot about the technicalities. Or maybe she assumed I would just sign whatever she wanted because I was too scared to fight back. She was wrong. My phone rang at 11 that night, jerking me out of my analysis. The caller ID showed Blake Morrison, Patricia's chief financial officer and her most loyal attack dog. Esther. His voice was ice. Patricia wants your signature on an amended escrow document by 8 tomorrow morning. We're emailing it now. Blake, I don't work there anymore, I said carefully. You work there until we say you don't. Sign the document, or we'll sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. We have a team of lawyers ready to bury you. The line went dead. My email pinged. The amended document was there, transferring all signing authority to Blake Morrison. My hands started shaking again, but this time not from humiliation, from fear. They were cornering me, forcing me to give up the only leverage I had. I thought I could just walk away, let the disaster happen, and be far away when everything collapsed. But Patricia wasn't going to let me walk away. She was going to make sure I had no choice but to cooperate. Or, face l'égale destruction. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, staring at the amended escrow document, watching the clock tick toward morning. At 7, I made coffee with shaking hands. At 7:30, I called Amy Brennan. Amy and I were roommates in college at Northwestern. She went to law school while I got my MBA. Now she practiced contract law at a mid-sized firm in downtown Chicago. We still met for lunch once a month, complained about our jobs, laughed about our dating disasters. Esther? It's 7:30 in the morning, Amy answered, her voice thick with sleep. I need your help, legal help. I heard her sit up. What happened? I explained everything. The demotion, the escrow document, Blake's threat. I sent her the amended agreement over email while we talked. Amy was quiet for a long time, reading. Then, okay, here's the situation. If you don't sign, they can argue you're sabotaging the deal. Patricia could claim you caused damages. With a deal this size, we're talking about potential liability in the millions. My stomach dropped. But I found real problems with TechVault. Do you have proof Patricia was properly warned? I have my memo. I have emails. That might not be enough. She can argue it was your opinion, not fact. She can say she exercised reasonable business judgment in proceeding. Unless you can prove she knowingly ignored material misrepresentations, you're just a disgruntled employee interfering with business operations. I closed my eyes. So I have to sign. If you don't sign, you're looking at years of litigation and possible personal bankruptcy. I'm sorry, Esther. I know this isn't what you want to hear. After I hung up with Amy, I sat at my table and stared at the document. Sign it and give up. Let the merger proceed. Let 500 employees lose their jobs in 18 months when everything collapsed. or refuse and face financial ruin from legal fees defending myself. At 8:15, another email arrived. This one from Human Resources. Subject: Termination. Notice. Effective immediately. I opened it with numb fingers. Dear Esther Carrington, this letter is to inform you that your employment with Summit Solutions is terminated effective immediately for insubordination and failure to fulfill job duties. Your final paycheck and accrued vacation time will be processed within 14 days, as required by Illinois law. The email was copied to the entire executive team. Dozens of people I had worked with for years now knew I was fired. The humiliation was public and complete, but there was more. Attached was a separation agreement. If I signed the Escrow amendment and the separation agreement by 9 that morning, I would receive 6 months severance, 26 weeks of pay, health insurance coverage, a neutral reference letter. If I refused either document, I got nothing, and Summit Solutions would pursue legal action for damages. The separation agreement included 2 clauses that made my blood run cold: a non-disparagement clause that forbade me from saying anything negative about Summit Solutions or the merger, and a non-disclosure agreement that prevented me from discussing any confidential information I learned during my employment, specifically including details about the TechVault merger. Patricia was systematically silencing me. The public demotion destroyed my credibility. The firing eliminated my platform. And now the separation agreement would legally prevent me from ever speaking about what I found. It was 9 o'clock. The signing was at 10. I had 1 hour to decide. I looked at the numbers again. 6 months severance would give me time to find a new job. Without it, my savings would last maybe 3 months in Chicago. And if Summit Solutions sued me, legal fees would drain everything. But if I signed, I was letting a disaster happen. I was prioritizing my own survival over 500 people who had no idea their jobs were about to disappear. I made my decision. I hit reply on the email and typed, "I decline to sign either document. See you in court." My finger hovered over send. Every rational part of my brain screamed that I was making a terrible mistake, but I clicked send anyway. For exactly 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone exploded. Blake Morrison left a voicemail. "You just made the biggest mistake of your career. We're filing suit this afternoon." 3 emails arrived from people I had never met, all with law firm addresses, all informing me that Summit Solutions had retained them to pursue various legal actions against me. And then the character assassination began. At 9:15, my LinkedIn profile was flooded with anonymous comments. Heard Esther Carrington was fired for incompetence. Word is she tried to sabotage a major deal at Summit Solutions. Avoid this one, she's a liability. My phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues. "Esther, what's going on? Someone said you were fired for ethics violations? Just saw something about you on LinkedIn. Is it true?" Someone had leaked a false narrative to the industry, and it was spreading like fire. Within 30 minutes, my professional reputation was being destroyed in real time. Even if I was right about TechVault, nobody would believe me now. I was the disgruntled, fired employee with an axe to grind. I sat on my couch, watching my career disintegrate on my phone screen, and realized Patricia had won. She had anticipated every move. The merger would proceed. The disaster would happen in 18 months. And when it did, I would be blamed for trying to stop it. I had thrown away my career for nothing. But then I remembered something. The escrow account. I opened my laptop and pulled up the agreement again, reading every word carefully. There was a clause I had forgotten, buried in the standard legal language that most people never read. Any party with signatory authority could place a 72-hour hold on fund disbursement if they identified potential fraud or material misrepresentation. It was a protective clause designed to give parties a last chance to catch problems before money changed hands. If someone with signing authority believed something was wrong, they could freeze the funds for 3 days while the situation was investigated. I was still the listed signatory. The amended documents hadn't been filed because I refused to sign them, which meant I could freeze the escrow. But there was a catch. Triggering a hold falsely was fraud. If I couldn't prove there were real problems with TechVault within 72 hours, I would face criminal charges. Securities fraud carried a minimum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. It was 9:45. I had 15 minutes until the signing. I logged into the Midwest Escrow Services portal using my credentials. They hadn't been deactivated yet. I navigated to the merger escrow account. $230 million sat in that account, waiting to be released. There was a button labeled, Request Disbursement Hold. My entire future came down to this moment. Sign the separation agreement, take the money, walk away, and let it all burn. Or freeze the account, risk federal prison, and bet everything that I could prove the truth in 72 hours. I thought about the employees I had worked with for 6 years, the analysts who stayed late helping me with reports, the administrative staff who always remembered my birthday, the maintenance workers who kept the building running, 500 people who had families, mortgages, car payments, dreams. I clicked the button. A form appeared. Reason for hold. I typed, Material misrepresentation regarding target company asset valuations and revenue sustainability. Upload supporting documentation. I attached my original memo to Patricia. I attached my analysis of TechVault's licensing agreements. I attached the email chain showing Patricia dismissing my concerns. My hand hovered over the submit button. Through my apartment window, I could see the Chicago skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Patricia was preparing to sign the deal that would make her millions in bonuses and destroy hundreds of lives. I clicked Submit. The system processed for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then, hold request submitted. Escrow account frozen for 72 hours. All parties notified. My phone immediately exploded with notifications. Emails, texts, calls, all coming in simultaneously. I ignored them and opened my laptop browser. I pulled up the news. Nothing yet, but I knew it was coming. Then my phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. I answered. You have just destroyed your life. Patricia's voice was pure venom. My lawyers are filing criminal charges against you right now. Fraud, extortion, interference with business operations. You'll spend the next decade in prison. I found problems with the deal, I said, surprised my voice was steady. That's all I did. And Marcus Bryant's legal team? They're suing you personally for damages. He just lost a $230 million deal because of your lies. You'll be bankrupt before lunch. The line went dead. I sat in my apartment, alone, and realized what I had done. I thought freezing the escrow would buy time to expose the truth. Instead, I had triggered a cascade of legal action that would crush me. I had 72 hours to prove Patricia knowingly pursued a fraudulent deal, but I had no resources, no lawyer, no access to company records, and an entire industry that now saw me as a criminal. And Marcus Bryant, the one person who might verify my claims about TechVault's licensing problems, now considered me the enemy who killed his deal. At 10:15 that morning, I received an automated email from Midwest Escrow Services confirming the hold. But right below it was another email that made my blood run cold. From FBI Securities Fraud Division. Miss Carrington, your escrow hold request has triggered an automatic review under federal securities law. An agent will contact you within 24 hours to discuss your allegations. Please be advised that filing a fraudulent hold request constitutes a federal crime punishable by up to 15 years imprisonment. I stared at the words until they blurred. I had known there would be consequences, but I hadn't realized how fast they would come. The FBI was involved now. I had one day to prepare for an interview that could determine whether I spent the next 15 years in prison. I needed evidence, real, verifiable, independent evidence that TechVault's business model was built on expiring licenses. My memo wasn't enough. My analysis wasn't enough. I needed something Patricia couldn't dismiss as my paranoid opinion. I spent the next 2 hours making phone calls. First, to DataSource Incorporated, one of the 3 companies that license technology to TechVault. The receptionist transferred me to their licensing department. Hi, I'm conducting due diligence on TechVault Industries for a potential investment, I lied. Can you confirm the status of your licensing agreement with them? I'm sorry, we can't disclose details about client contracts, the licensing manager said. I tried Cloud Matrix next. Same result. These were large companies with legal departments that knew better than to discuss client relationships with random callers. But I was running out of time and options. At noon, I drove to Summit Solutions headquarters. I knew it was a risk, but I needed to be there. Maybe I could pull Marcus Bryant aside, show him the documentation, before Patricia poisoned him against me completely. I parked in the visitor lot. My employee access badge had been deactivated, so I had to enter through the main lobby like a stranger. The security guard at the desk looked up as I approached. Miss Carrington. His voice was apologetic. You're not authorized to be in the building. I just need to speak with someone from TechVault. Marcus Bryant. It's important. The guard picked up his phone and called upstairs. I could hear him speaking quietly, then listened for a long moment. He hung up and looked at me with something like pity. I'm sorry. You need to leave. Please. Just 5 minutes. Ma'am, I've been instructed to call the police if you don't leave immediately. I was turning toward the door when the elevator opened and Blake Morrison emerged, flanked by 2 security officers and a woman in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Esther Carrington? The woman stepped forward and handed me a document. I'm Diane Foster, attorney for Summit Solutions. This is a temporary restraining order issued this morning by the Circuit Court of Cook County. I took the document with numb fingers. It was official court paperwork, complete with a judge's signature. You are hereby ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from all Summit Solutions properties and personnel. You are forbidden from contacting anyone associated with Summit Solutions or TechVault Industries. You are forbidden from interfering with normal business operations. Violation of this order may result in arrest and criminal charges. Blake leaned in close. Patricia knew you'd try something. She filed for this restraining order at 8 this morning, before you even refused to sign. She's always 3 steps ahead of you, Esther. Walk away now, or the police are coming. Through the glass walls of the lobby, I could see the 14th floor executive conference room. People were gathering. I recognized Marcus Bryant from the photos I had seen during due diligence. Tall, mid-50s, graying hair, wearing an expensive suit. He was shaking hands with Patricia. The signing was being rescheduled. They were going to figure out a way around the escrow hold. Maybe they would pressure Midwest Escrow Services to release the funds early. Maybe they would restructure the deal to bypass the escrow entirely. I had 72 hours, but Patricia was already working to make those hours irrelevant. "You have 2 minutes to leave the property," Diane Foster said. I walked backward toward the exit, watching through the glass as Patricia laughed at something Marcus said. She looked relaxed, confident. She had anticipated every move I made and countered it before I even started. I got in my car and sat there for a long moment, trying to think. The restraining order meant I couldn't approach anyone from either company. I couldn't attend any meetings. I couldn't call them. I was completely cut off from the people who needed to hear the truth. My phone rang. Amy Brennan. "Esther." Her voice was shaking. "I just got a call from Wolcott and Price, one of the biggest law firms in Chicago. They represent Summit Solutions. They said if I continue to advise you, they'll file a bar complaint against me for participating in your interference with the merger." "Amy, I haven't done anything illegal." "I know, but I can't risk it. I have 3 kids. My husband just lost his job. I can't afford to have my license suspended, even temporarily, while they investigate. I'm so sorry." She hung up. I was alone. No lawyer, no credibility, no access, no way to stop the merger. And in 24 hours, the FBI would interview me about allegations I couldn't prove. It was 1 in the afternoon. I had less than a day to find evidence strong enough to convince federal investigators that I wasn't lying. I drove back to my apartment, my mind spinning through options. I needed to verify the licensing agreements independently. I needed proof that wasn't dependent on my analysis or my memo. Back at my desk, I started searching public records. TechVault was a publicly traded company, which meant they filed quarterly reports with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I downloaded every SEC filing from the past 3 years and started reading. Most of it was standard corporate language about revenue, expenses, risk factors, legal proceedings. But on page 73 of their most recent quarterly report, buried in the footnotes, I found something. Certain material agreements relating to technology licensing are subject to renewal negotiations within the next 18 months. Failure to successfully renew these agreements could have a material adverse effect on the company's business and results of operations. It was there. In TechVault's own disclosure, they admitted the licenses were expiring and that losing them would be catastrophic. This was independently verifiable information, filed with the federal government, available to anyone who looked hard enough. But had Patricia's due diligence team seen it? Had they simply missed it? Or had they seen it and ignored it? I went back through my files and found the due diligence report Summit Solutions' legal team had prepared. It was 200 pages long, analyzing TechVault's contracts, financial statements, legal exposure, market position. I searched the document for any mention of the licensing agreements. Nothing. The report touched on TechVault's technology partnerships in general terms, but never mentioned the expiration dates, never mentioned the revenue dependency, never flagged it as a risk factor. Either Summit Solutions' due diligence was catastrophically incompetent, or Patricia had told them not to look too closely. I had evidence now. TechVault's own SEC filing admitting the problem. Summit Solutions' due diligence report failing to mention it. My memo showing I tried to raise the alarm 3 months ago. But was it enough? At 3:30 in the afternoon, I decided I had one option left. I had to get to Marcus Bryant. I had to show him what I found before Patricia convinced him I was crazy. The restraining order forbade me from contacting him. But I was out of choices. I looked up where TechVault's executive team was staying during the merger negotiations. Their SEC filings listed Marcus Bryant's assistant's contact information for investor relations. I called the number. TechVault Investor Relations. This is Jessica. Hi, I'm trying to reach Marcus Bryant. I have some time-sensitive information about the Summit Solutions merger. Mr. Bryant is in meetings all day. I can take a message. Can you tell me where he's staying? I need to deliver some documents in person. I'm sorry. We don't disclose that information. I hung up and tried a different approach. I Googled Marcus Bryant's Chicago hotel and found a press release from 2 weeks ago about the merger negotiations. It mentioned that TechVault's leadership team would be based in Chicago throughout October. The photo showed Marcus standing in front of the Palmer House Hilton. It was a guess, but it was all I had. At 4 o'clock, I drove downtown to the Palmer House. The historic hotel was in the Loop, 15 stories of elegant architecture and old money. I parked in a nearby garage and walked to the lobby. I had no plan beyond hoping to spot Marcus Bryant. I sat in the lobby for an hour, watching the elevator banks, pretending to read emails on my phone. At 5:15, I saw him. Marcus Bryant emerged from an elevator with 3 other people, all in business attire, all looking tired. I stood and approached. "Mr. Bryant, please, I need 5 minutes." Marcus stopped. His expression went from confused to angry as he recognized me. "You're Esther Carrington." "Yes, and I can prove what I told you about the licensing agreements. TechVault's own SEC filing confirms it. Page 73 of your last quarterly report." Marcus's head of security stepped between us. A large man in a dark suit. He put his hand out to stop me from getting closer. "Mr. Bryant, this woman filed a fraudulent escrow hold to kill our deal," one of the other executives said. "Don't talk to her." Marcus's face hardened. "You just cost my company months of work and millions in deal preparation costs. Get away from me." He walked past, his team following. I stood in the lobby, watching them leave, and felt the last bit of hope drain out of me. Within 10 minutes, my phone rang. "Chicago Police Department. Miss Carrington? This is Detective Brian Murphy. Patricia Hendricks filed a complaint stating you violated a restraining order by approaching Marcus Bryant at the Palmer House Hilton. I need you to come to the station." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. I was about to be arrested. Tomorrow I had an FBI interview. I had no lawyer, no credibility, and a CEO determined to destroy me. I had lost. Detective Murphy met me at the front desk of the District 18 police station on Chicago Avenue. He was in his mid-40s, with tired eyes and the patient manner of someone who had seen everything. He led me to a small interview room and gestured for me to sit. "Miss Carrington, I reviewed the restraining order and Miss Hendricks' complaint. You approached Marcus Bryant at his hotel approximately 1 hour ago, correct?" "Yes. The restraining order specifically forbids contact with anyone from TechVault Industries." "I know." Detective Murphy leaned back in his chair. "Here's the thing. Restraining orders are serious, but this one is civil, not criminal. What that means is I can't actually arrest you for violating it. Your lawyer would handle this in civil court." "I don't have a lawyer," he sighed. "Then you're in a tough spot. If Bryant decides to press charges or if Patricia Hendricks pushes this, you'll be dealing with contempt of court proceedings. But right now, this isn't criminal. I'm giving you a warning. Don't approach these people again." I left the station an hour later, technically free but feeling more trapped than ever. Back at my apartment that evening, I sat at my desk and stared at my computer screen. I had the SEC filing showing TechVault disclosed the licensing problem. I had my memo showing I warned Patricia. I had Summit Solutions' due diligence report showing they missed or ignored the issue. But I needed something more. Independent verification from one of the licensing companies. Proof that the licenses were actually expiring and wouldn't be renewed. I called System Bridge, the third licensing company. One more time. This time I got lucky. The person who answered wasn't in the legal department. It was a junior sales representative named Tyler, who sounded young and eager. "Hi, I'm researching TechVault Industries for a potential investment partnership," I said, keeping my voice casual and friendly. "I saw in their reports they use your licensing platform. How's that relationship going?" "Oh yeah, TechVault is one of our bigger clients. Well, for now anyway." My pulse quickened. For now? The license expires next July. We're not renewing. Really? Why not? Our technology has moved in a different direction. Plus, TechVault's been difficult to work with. Lot of complaints from our tech team. We decided it wasn't worth the headache. So after July, TechVault won't have access to your platform anymore? Nope. We sent them official notice 3 months ago. I was recording the call on my phone, legal in Illinois, with one-party consent. Can you repeat that? About the non-renewal? Sure. SystemBridge is not renewing our licensing agreement with TechVault Industries when it expires next July. Thank you so much for your help. I hung up and immediately backed up the recording to 3 different locations. This was the proof I needed. Independent verification from one of the licensing companies themselves. But it still wasn't enough to prove Patricia acted knowingly. She could claim she relied on her due diligence team, that she had no idea about the licensing problems, that the deal seemed solid based on the information she had. Unless I could prove she saw the problems and buried them deliberately. I was thinking about this when my laptop pinged with a new email from Midwest Escrow Services. Subject: Early Release Request, 72-hour hold. I opened it with a sinking feeling. Miss Carrington, Summit Solutions has filed a motion in Federal District Court requesting early release of escrowed funds, arguing your hold request was filed in bad faith and is causing irreparable harm to all parties. A hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. before Judge Margaret Sullivan. You are invited to appear and present arguments against early release. Tomorrow morning at 9. 1 hour before my FBI interview at 10. If the judge released the funds, the merger would close immediately. The 72-hour hold would become meaningless. And Patricia's lawyers would argue I should be held in contempt of court for filing a fraudulent hold. I had to attend the hearing and defend my hold, but I had no lawyer. Going into federal court alone against Summit Solutions' team of attorneys was suicide. Or I could skip the hearing and focus on the FBI interview. But if I wasn't there to defend the hold, the judge would almost certainly release the funds by default. I couldn't win both fights. I had to choose. At 11 that night, I made a desperate decision. I called Marcus Bryant's cell phone. I got the number from TechVault's investor relations page. Calling him was another violation of the restraining order, but I was already facing so many legal problems that one more hardly mattered. He answered on the 4th ring. "Who is this?" "Marcus Bryant, this is Esther Carrington. Before you hang up, I'm sending you 2 things. TechVault's SEC filing, page 73, where your own company discloses the licensing problem, and a recording of your licensing partner at SystemBridge confirming they're not renewing. If I'm lying, hang up. If I'm right, meet me at the federal courthouse tomorrow at 9. I sent the files while I talked. There was a long silence. "If this is some kind of trick," Marcus said slowly, "it's not. I'm risking federal prison to tell you the truth. Look at the documents." He hung up. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, with no idea if he would actually look at what I sent or if he would just forward everything to Patricia's lawyers as evidence of me violating the restraining order. I didn't sleep that night. I prepared for both the hearing and the FBI interview, knowing I was probably going to fail at both. At 5 in the morning, my apartment buzzer rang. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 people in suits. One held up an FBI badge. My FBI interview was supposed to be at 10. Why were they here 5 hours early? I opened the door. Esther Carrington? The agent was in his late 30s, with sharp eyes and a serious expression. I'm Special Agent Timothy Ross, FBI Securities Fraud Division. This is Special Agent Laura Simmons. We need to talk to you right now. My interview was scheduled for 10, I said. Agent Simmons spoke up. Patricia Hendricks filed an emergency complaint 2 hours ago. She's accusing you of extortion. She claims you're demanding $500,000 to drop the escrow hold. My blood went cold. That's insane. I never asked her for money. Agent Ross pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. Text messages from my phone number to Patricia's personal cell. Drop the hold and wire $500,000 to account ending in 4,782. You know this deal is dirty. Pay up, or I expose everything. Another message. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. No money, no deal. I'll make sure every news outlet in Chicago knows what you did. I stared at the messages in horror. I didn't send those. I've never sent her any texts. These came from your phone number, Agent Simmons said. Then someone spoofed my number or hacked my phone. I don't know, but I didn't send them. Agent Ross looked skeptical. Miss Carrington, extortion is a federal crime carrying up to 15 years in prison. We need you to come with us. I have a court hearing at 9, I said desperately, and your interview at 10. I didn't do this. Someone is framing me. We're taking you into custody, Agent Simmons said. You can explain everything at the field office. They read me my rights. I was handcuffed, taken down to an unmarked car, and driven to the FBI field office on West Roosevelt Road. By the time we arrived, it was 6:30 in the morning. I was processed, photographed, fingerprinted. They took my phone, my laptop, my bag. Then I was placed in a holding cell to wait. The federal courthouse hearing was in 2.5 hours. I couldn't be there. Patricia would argue for early release of the escrow funds, and I wouldn't be present to defend the hold. The judge would release the money. The merger would close, and I would be in prison, facing extortion charges. Patricia had outmaneuvered me completely. She had somehow fabricated text messages from my phone demanding money. She had turned my attempt to stop a fraudulent merger into evidence that I was a criminal trying to extort her. I sat in the holding cell, my head in my hands, and realized this was the end. I had thrown away my career, my savings, my freedom, and my future. And I had failed to stop the merger. At 7:30, a guard came to the cell. You get one phone call. I had already used my call earlier to leave a message for Amy Brennan, even though I knew she couldn't help me. But they were giving me another one. I called the only person I could think of. Marcus Bryant. He answered. Who is this? Marcus. It's Esther Carrington. I'm in federal custody. They're saying I tried to extort Patricia, but I didn't. She faked the messages. The hearing is at 9. If you looked at those documents I sent, you know I'm telling the truth. Please. There was a long pause. I looked at the documents, Marcus said finally. Your SEC filing reference is accurate. I also had my IT security team check the metadata on those extortion texts. They didn't come from your phone. They came from an IP address registered to Summit Solutions. My heart almost stopped. What? Someone at Summit Solutions faked those messages to frame you. I'm guessing Patricia, or someone on her team. I'll see you at the hearing." He hung up. I sat in the cell, processing what he had just said. Marcus had verified my claims about TechVault, and his IT team had proven the extortion texts were fabricated. But I was still in custody. The hearing was in 90 minutes, and I had no way to get there. At 8:15, Agent Ross came to my holding cell. "Miss Carrington, Marcus Bryant's attorney, just contacted us. They provided forensic evidence showing those text messages were spoofed from Summit Solutions' corporate network. The metadata analysis is pretty conclusive." I looked up at him. "So you know I didn't send them?" "It appears you were framed. We're releasing you, but you're still required to appear for your scheduled interview at 10 to discuss the escrow hold. I need to be at the federal courthouse at 9. There's a hearing." Agent Ross checked his watch. "Then you better hurry." They released me at 8:30. I had 30 minutes to get from the FBI field office on the west side to the Dirksen Federal Building downtown, in morning rush hour traffic. I ran to my car, which had been left in the FBI parking lot, and drove like my life depended on it. I hit every red light, got stuck behind 2 buses, and watched the clock tick closer to 9. I arrived at the Dirksen building at 8:57. I parked illegally in a loading zone and sprinted inside. Security screening took 5 minutes. I got to the courtroom on the 19th floor at 9:04. The hearing had already started. I slipped in through the back doors, still wearing yesterday's clothes, my hair a mess, probably looking exactly like what I was, someone who had spent the morning in federal custody. The courtroom was packed. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table with 6 lawyers in expensive suits. Blake Morrison sat beside her, looking smug. Press filled the gallery. This was a big story now. Major merger halted by rogue employee. Judge Margaret Sullivan presided, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for being brilliant and unforgiving. Patricia's lead attorney, Richard Slate, was already presenting his argument. "Your Honor, Miss Carrington filed this hold in retaliation for being terminated. She has no evidence of fraud or material misrepresentation. She's a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage a legitimate business transaction. The hold is causing millions of dollars in damages every day it remains in place. We request immediate release of the escrowed funds." He presented documents showing I had been fired for cause. He presented the fake extortion texts, even though the FBI had just proven they were spoofed. He painted me as unstable, vindictive, and desperate. Patricia nodded along, her face a mask of concerned professionalism. Judge Sullivan looked up. "Is Miss Carrington present?" "I'm here, Your Honor." I stood from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. Patricia's expression flickered with surprise, then hardened into anger. "Miss Carrington, please approach," Judge Sullivan said. I walked down the aisle to the defendant's table, aware of every eye on me. I sat down alone. No lawyer, no briefcase full of documents, just me and a laptop bag. "Are you represented by counsel?" Judge Sullivan asked. "No, Your Honor. I'm representing myself." Murmurs through the courtroom. "Miss Carrington, you're facing serious allegations, and you're defending an action that could expose you to significant liability. Are you certain you want to proceed without an attorney?" "I don't have a choice, Your Honor." Judge Sullivan looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "Very well. You may present your defense." I stood. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor, I filed the escrow hold because Summit Solutions' due diligence on TechVault Industries was either negligent or deliberately incomplete. TechVault's business model depends on licensing agreements with 3 software companies. Those licenses expire in 18 months and will not be renewed. When they expire, TechVault will lose 60% of its revenue. I discovered this 6 months ago and reported it to Patricia Hendricks 3 months ago. She dismissed my concerns and buried my report. Then she fired me to silence me. I pulled out my laptop and projected documents on the courtroom screen. My memo to Patricia. The email chain showing her dismissing my concerns. Summit Solutions due diligence report that failed to mention the licensing issues. Then I showed TechVault's SEC filing, page 73, where they disclosed the licensing problem in their own regulatory filings. This information was publicly available. Summit Solutions' due diligence team should have found it. I found it. The question is whether Miss Hendricks knew about it and proceeded anyway. Richard Slate jumped up. Your Honor, this is speculation and conjecture from a fired employee with an axe to grind. TechVault's legal team has provided assurances that all licensing agreements are secure. Miss Carrington is lying to cover up her extortion attempt. About that, a voice said from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Marcus Bryant walked down the aisle, followed by his attorney and another man in a suit carrying a laptop. Judge Sullivan looked surprised. Mr. Bryant, you're the CEO of TechVault Industries? Yes, Your Honor. May I address the court? This is highly irregular, but given you're a principal party to this transaction, I'll allow it. Marcus approached the bench. Your Honor, last night Miss Carrington contacted me and provided documents showing problems with my company's licensing agreements. I spent the night verifying the information with my technology team. She's correct. 3 of our major licenses expire in 18 months, and at least one of them will not be renewed. Our revenue projections are built on technology we won't have access to in less than 2 years. The courtroom erupted. Patricia went pale. Blake Morrison stood up, shouting something that was drowned out by the noise. Judge Sullivan banged her gavel. Order, Marcus continued. I pulled out of this merger at midnight last night. I sent formal notification to Summit Solutions Board of Directors. The deal is dead. We're not buying a company whose due diligence team either missed or ignored fundamental problems with our business model. Richard Slate tried to object. Your Honor, this is obviously a conspiracy between Bryant and Carrington to defraud my client. Marcus turned to him. About Miss Carrington's alleged extortion attempt. I had my IT security team examine the text messages. They were spoofed. The metadata shows they originated from an IP address registered to Summit Solutions' corporate network. Someone on Miss Hendricks' team fabricated those messages to frame Miss Carrington. The man with Marcus stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm Nathan Cole, Chief Information Security Officer for TechVault. I have a forensic report showing exactly how those texts were spoofed and where they came from. With your permission, I can present the technical details. Judge Sullivan nodded. Nathan Cole projected his analysis on the screen. IP addresses, routing data, timestamps. It was technical, but damning. The extortion texts had been sent from inside Summit Solutions headquarters using software designed to fake caller IDs and text message origins. Someone at Summit Solutions created these messages to make it look like they came from Miss Carrington's phone, Nathan explained. It's a technique commonly used in phishing scams. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Patricia was shaking her head, whispering urgently to her lawyers. Blake Morrison had gone white. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly. A text from Marcus Bryant. Check your email. I opened my email on my phone. Marcus had sent me a signed statement confirming TechVault's licensing problems and Summit Solutions' negligent due diligence. He had also copied the Securities and Exchange Commission. The SEC was opening an investigation into Patricia Hendricks. Judge Sullivan looked at the evidence, then at Patricia, then at me. The escrow hold stands, she said firmly. In fact, given the evidence presented today, I'm extending it indefinitely pending SEC review of this transaction. Miss Carrington, the allegations against you appear to be unfounded. You're free to go. She turned to Patricia. Miss Hendricks, I'm ordering you and your executive team to make yourselves available for federal investigators. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Patricia sat frozen at the plaintiff's table, her lawyers gathering papers frantically. Blake Morrison was trying to leave through a side door, but federal marshals were blocking it. I stood there, barely able to process what had just happened. Agents Ross and Simmons approached me. Miss Carrington, we owe you an apology. The evidence against you was falsified. We should have been more thorough before making an arrest. It's okay, I said. You were doing your job. Marcus Bryant came over. Miss Carrington, I owe you more than an apology. If we had completed that merger, you would have saved my company from catastrophic losses. Thank you for your courage. You listened, I said. That's all I needed. Outside the courthouse, press swarmed me. I gave a brief statement. I did what I thought was right to protect the employees of Summit Solutions and the investors of TechVault Industries. I'm grateful the truth came out. Jordan Walsh pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Esther, I'm so sorry. Patricia threatened to fire me if I helped you. She threatened all of us. I hugged her. I know. It's over now. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Patricia Hendricks resigned as CEO of Summit Solutions under pressure from the board of directors. The SEC investigation revealed she had received multiple warnings about TechVault's licensing problems, not just from me but from 2 other analysts on the due diligence team. She had buried all of them because she was obsessed with closing the biggest deal of her career and collecting her $10 million bonus. She was charged with securities fraud and obstruction of justice. Her trial was scheduled for the following spring. Blake Morrison was fired and charged with computer fraud for creating the fake extortion texts. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Summit Solutions Board of Directors called an emergency meeting. They needed to rebuild the company's reputation and leadership. They offered me Patricia's old position as Chief Executive Officer. I said no, but I agreed to become Chief Financial Officer with full authority over all future mergers and acquisitions and a seat on the board of directors. I wanted to make sure what happened to me never happened to anyone else. They agreed immediately. 3 weeks after the courthouse hearing, I stood in the same Hilton ballroom where Patricia had publicly humiliated me. This time, the company had gathered for a different announcement. The interim CEO, a board member named Douglas Hartman, stood at the podium. I want to introduce you to Summit Solutions' new Chief Financial Officer, Esther Carrington. Many of you know that Esther showed extraordinary courage in recent weeks, protecting this company from a merger that would have destroyed us. She represents the values we want to rebuild here: integrity, diligence, and the courage to speak truth even when it's difficult. The 500 employees stood and applauded. It went on for 2 full minutes. I took the podium, looking out at faces I had worked with for 6 years. 3 weeks ago, I stood here and watched my career get destroyed in front of all of you. I want you to know that I don't blame anyone who stayed silent when it happened. Patricia Hendricks created an environment where speaking up meant losing everything. But that environment ends today. If you see something wrong, you have my personal commitment that you can come to me and you will be heard. No retaliation, no intimidation, just the truth. More applause. After the town hall, I went to my new office, the corner office with the view of Lake Michigan that used to be Patricia's. I had insisted on one condition: before accepting the CFO position. I wanted Helen Cartwright reinstated as Chief Compliance Officer. Helen was waiting in my office when I arrived. "Esther," she said, crying, "I can't believe you want me back after I abandoned you." I hugged her. "Helen, you gave me the evidence I needed to prove Patricia suppressed my warnings. You risked your severance and your family's health insurance just by doing that. You're exactly the kind of person this company needs in compliance." Helen accepted. We spent the next month rebuilding Summit Solutions' due diligence processes, creating new channels for employees to raise concerns, and implementing protections for whistleblowers. Marcus Bryant called me personally to discuss a new kind of partnership between Summit Solutions and TechVault. Not a merger, but a strategic alliance built on transparency and shared due diligence. "We both learned expensive lessons," Marcus said. "TechVault is restructuring our licensing dependencies and diversifying our technology partnerships. And I want you personally reviewing any deal we do together." I agreed. 6 months later, both companies had recovered. Summit Solutions' stock price stabilized once investors realized we had avoided a disastrous merger. TechVault successfully renegotiated 2 of their 3 expiring licenses and developed alternative technologies to replace the 3rd. The media called me a hero. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile. The CFO who risked everything to tell the truth. Forbes included me in their list of women who changed business this year. But I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because 500 people deserved to keep their jobs. Because investors deserved to know what they were buying. Because the truth mattered more than my career. One evening, I received a letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from Patricia Hendricks, awaiting trial in a minimum security federal facility. I opened it. "Esther, you destroyed my career, my reputation, and my future. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done. Everything I worked for is gone because you couldn't trust my judgment. I was trying to build something great, and you tore it down out of spite." I read it twice, then filed it away without responding. Patricia still didn't understand. She still thought this was about her career versus mine, about my supposed spite or vindictiveness. She couldn't see that it was about 500 families who depended on their paychecks, about investors who trusted that the people running companies were acting in good faith, about the fundamental principle that truth matters. I never wrote back. Instead, I focused on rebuilding Summit Solutions into a company where people like me could speak up without being destroyed, where due diligence meant actually finding problems instead of hiding them, where integrity was valued more than deal-closing bonuses. A year after the courthouse hearing, I stood in front of the Chicago Business Ethics Council to receive their annual Integrity and Leadership Award. The event was at the Four Seasons, with business leaders from across the city in attendance. Marcus Bryant introduced me. A year ago, Esther Carrington made a choice that should have been easy but required incredible courage. She chose truth over her career. She chose integrity over safety. And because of that choice, 2 companies are stronger, hundreds of employees still have jobs, and thousands of investors avoided catastrophic losses. She reminds us all why character matters in business. I accepted the award and looked out at the audience. "Thank you, but I want to be clear about something. What I did wasn't heroic. It was terrifying. Every step of the way, I was sure I was making a mistake. I thought I would lose everything, and for a while, it looked like I would. I was publicly humiliated, fired, arrested, and nearly sent to federal prison for crimes I didn't commit. The system didn't protect me. In fact, the system was weaponized against me by someone with more money, more power, and more lawyers than I could ever hope to have." I paused, letting that sink in. So, why am I standing here instead of in ruins? 3 reasons. First, I had evidence, not opinions, not feelings, but hard documentation that I kept meticulously. Second, one person with power chose to listen. Marcus Bryant could have dismissed me like everyone else did. Instead, he took the time to verify what I was saying. And third, I got lucky. If Blake Morrison had been smarter about faking those extortion texts, if Marcus hadn't had an IT security team capable of proving they were spoofed, if the judge had released the escrow funds before I could present my evidence, I would have lost. I looked directly at the young professionals in the audience. Here's what I learned. The system doesn't automatically protect people who tell the truth. Speaking up doesn't guarantee justice. Doing the right thing often means risking everything with no assurance that things will work out. But here's what else I learned. Silence guarantees that nothing changes. If I had signed those documents and walked away, Patricia would still be CEO. Blake would still be CFO. And in 6 months, Summit Solutions would have completed the merger. In 18 months, when TechVault's licenses expired, both companies would have collapsed. 500 people would have lost their jobs at Summit alone. Thousands more at TechVault. Investors would have lost hundreds of millions of dollars. All because I chose safety over truth. I held up the award. This isn't a trophy for being brave. It's a reminder that integrity is expensive. It cost me my job, my reputation, my savings on legal fees, and nearly my freedom. But you know what it saved? My ability to look at myself in the mirror, my relationships with people who matter, my belief that truth has weight and meaning. And yeah, 500 jobs and 2 companies. I set the award down and spoke more softly. If you're in a position where you see something wrong, where you know something needs to be said, I can't promise you that speaking up will work out. I can't promise the system will protect you. I can't promise you won't lose everything. But I can promise that silence has a cost too. It costs your integrity. It costs your peace of mind. And it costs all the people who depend on someone having the courage to tell the truth. The room was completely silent. Patricia Hendricks is in federal prison because she chose her bonus over her company. Blake Morrison is in prison because he chose loyalty to Patricia over honesty. They both had opportunities to do the right thing, and they chose power instead. I'm standing here because when faced with the same choice, I chose differently. Not because I'm better than them, but because I couldn't live with myself otherwise. I picked up the award again. Thank you for this honor. But the real heroes are the people who create systems where telling the truth doesn't require destroying your life. The leaders who build cultures where raising concerns is rewarded instead of punished. The colleagues who support whistleblowers instead of abandoning them. And the organizations that value integrity enough to protect it even when it's expensive. The applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation. After the ceremony, dozens of people came up to me. Some shared their own stories of seeing wrongdoing and struggling with whether to speak up. Others asked for advice on protecting themselves if they needed to raise concerns at their own companies. One young woman, maybe 25, pulled me aside. I work in accounting at a healthcare company. I found discrepancies in our billing that look like fraud. But my boss told me to ignore them. I don't know what to do. I'm scared I'll end up like you, fighting for my life. I looked at her. Document everything. Get the evidence before you say anything. Find out who the right people are to report to, whether that's internal audit, the board, or regulatory authorities. Talk to a lawyer first. and understand that once you start down this road, there may be no turning back. But also understand that fraud in healthcare billing means patients are being hurt or defrauded. Your silence has consequences too. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. That conversation stayed with me. Because the truth is, what happened to me will keep happening to other people. Corporate fraud, negligent due diligence, leaders who prioritize deals over ethics. These problems didn't disappear when Patricia went to prison. The system that allowed her to weaponize the legal process against me is still there, waiting for the next whistleblower. But every time someone chooses to speak up anyway, the system gets a little bit weaker. Every time a leader chooses to listen instead of attack, the culture shifts a little bit more toward accountability. Every time a company like Summit Solutions rebuilds itself around integrity instead of deal flow, it proves that ethical business is possible. 3 years after the merger, that never happened, Summit Solutions is thriving. We completed 2 major acquisitions, both after exhaustive due diligence that actually found and addressed problems instead of hiding them. Our stock price is up 40%. Employee satisfaction is the highest it's been in a decade, and our reputation in the industry has shifted from aggressive dealmakers to trustworthy partners. TechVault successfully diversified their technology partnerships and went public with an IPO that valued them at 3 times what the Summit merger would have paid. Marcus Bryant credits the near disaster with forcing them to build a more sustainable business model. Patricia Hendricks served 14 months in federal prison and was released on probation. She's forbidden from serving as an officer or director of any public company. Last I heard, she was working as a consultant for private equity firms. Blake Morrison served his 18-month sentence and now works in IT security, ironically helping companies protect against the kind of fraud he committed. And me? I'm still CFO of Summit Solutions. I still have that corner office with the view of Lake Michigan. But more importantly, I sleep well at night knowing that when it mattered most, I chose truth over comfort. I keep Patricia's unsent letter in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the people who do wrong rarely see themselves as villains. Patricia genuinely believed she was building something great, and she saw me as the obstacle to her vision. She never understood that her vision was built on lies that would have destroyed hundreds of lives. The hardest part about integrity is that you often stand alone. The crowds don't cheer while you're losing your job. The awards don't come while you're sitting in a holding cell. The vindication happens later, if it happens at all. And you have to be willing to do the right thing, even if the vindication never comes. That's the real test of character. Not whether you can stand up when victory is guaranteed, but whether you can stand up when defeat seems certain. I think about that young woman from the award ceremony, the one who found fraud at her healthcare company. I don't know if she reported it. I don't know if she's okay, but I hope she is. And I hope she found the courage to speak up, because somewhere, patients are depending on someone caring enough to tell the truth. That's what this was always about. Not my career versus Patricia's. Not my judgment versus hers. It was about all the people who never knew their jobs and investments were at risk because someone decided closing a deal was more important than honesty. I wrote a journal entry the night after I froze the escrow account, when I thought I had destroyed my life for nothing. I found it recently while cleaning out some old files. They tried to silence me with humiliation, threats, legal action, and even false arrest. But they forgot one thing. The truth doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs one person brave enough to speak it. That person can be you. That person can be me. That person can be anyone who refuses to look away when something is wrong. I still believe that. Even after everything, especially after everything. The truth matters. Integrity matters. And sometimes one person's voice, backed by evidence and courage, can change everything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where speaking up meant risking everything? What choice did you make, and how did it turn out? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing that same impossible decision right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps others who need to hear this message find it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people navigating impossible ethical dilemmas in their careers and personal lives. And share this with someone who might be struggling with whether to speak truth to power. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that integrity is never wasted, even when it's expensive, even when it costs everything, especially then. Stay strong, stay honest, and remember that your voice matters more than you know.